Oh my.
Rolling.
The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the eastern shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. Enjoy the show.
So I'm actually pretty excited about this piece.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm getting excited listening to you talk about it. I mean, if anybody else out there getting excited, go
ahead, raise your hands.
Today's episode is sponsored by JFM Enterprises, providing distinctive ready-made and custom frames and moldings to the trade since 1974. Visit jfm.net to view their catalog of designs.
Welcome everyone to the happy hour version of one time was Coffee and Conversations. We're now calling half calf, a decaf, and a shot of cane. Anybody wants to rename it, please? We are here in the Town Shopping Center at the Plein Air Easton Headquarters Exhibition Hall, Expo Hall for 2020. Bringing you a closer look at the paintings this year that were done over the last week. So it's happy hour, Saturday. And we are here with Ken Karlic. Ken is a veteran of Plein Air Easton. It's his second time here, I believe. Ken, is that correct?
That's correct, Tim.
Ken, introduce yourself. Tell everybody where you're from and how you got here.
Okay, sure. Again, my name is Ken Karlic. I'm originally from Chicago. I've lived in Maryland for about 30 years. I'm a professional graphic designer, but have painted all my life. In the last 10 years is when I have gotten more serious about this whole thing we call plein air. And I've enjoyed a number of the opportunities with various events, but there's nothing like Plein Air Easton. It's something that we all strive for, something that many of us apply for and don't make several times. Right. But 2 years ago, I had the good fortune of being a part of the event, and completely in a lot of ways, it changed my life.
How's that? I mean, well, you sold some paintings, I imagine.
Well, I did well with that, and that's certainly, there's the reward that you feel when you create something and it resonates with someone well enough that they will actually part with money.
Right.
But I just have the highest respect for Plein Air Easton. I love the community, the communities, great places to paint, wonderful people, great organizers, just really, really well done. So, I mean,
That's great to hear. I mean, where are you from in Maryland? You live in Maryland? Where are you?
Yes, I'm sorry. I told you where I was from, but not where I am. I live in Bel Air, Maryland, which is about 10-15 miles north of Baltimore. I've lived there for, give or take, about 20 years. And then in Baltimore City and all for another 10, 15, 20 years or so.
Okay. Now, Ken, I want to talk about these paintings. Al was having a conversation last night talking about the importance of our judging system here at Plein Air Easton. We have a different judge, and you have to be juried in every year. It's not the same judge all the time. So no one paints exactly they're not able to paint for a particular style that a judge may like.
That's correct.
Which he said broadens the pool of plein air painters because you're not using the same judge and you don't know what anybody's tastes are.
Sure.
Obviously, these are much different than a lot of what's hanging in the room, although similar to plenty of things that are hanging in the room. And I understand that you went from part of your experimentation. You were in watercolors before, but now these are not watercolors. Is that correct? Or
it's a water media, but it's acrylic.
Okay. I have a ton of questions about this. I'm going to sound really stupid when I ask them. I will just preface them all by saying this.
Well, then I'll sound really authoritative in giving the answer.
There's no question about that. When I first fell in love with painting, the first paintings I ever liked, I didn't fall in love with painting. The first paintings that I liked as a child what drew me were abstract paintings. That's what I loved first. I grew to love this medium through my job here at the Avalon, working here. What got you into moving this way in terms of your painting?
I think those are really good questions. And sometimes they're not necessarily conscious choices. You know, it's an artistic journey, and you're in a boat on a stream, and you follow where the stream takes you, okay. Right? And my feeling about painting is, first and foremost, you have to entertain yourself. And that comes down to finding a location that is dynamic enough and challenging enough for you to engage in a couple or more hours. And I find that if I can entertain myself with some of those choices, some of those decisions throughout that process, I'm that much closer to entertaining someone else.
Okay.
And all of my work is based in representational work. However, I find that it's kind of like a bread sandwich for me. Where's the meat? It's not. I look at paintings and try to create paintings that are surprising, that they look as interesting and dynamic and surprising today as they might 20 years. And I think and you mentioned abstraction.
Because that's probably not the right word, right?
Well, no, I think it's a perfectly fine word. Essentially, what I'm looking to do in my work is to start with something representational, something familiar, and then dissolve it. Break down some barriers in terms of shapes, make it a little less recognizable, make it much more of, I'm looking at this third.
Yeah, I watch it. Okay.
No, that's all right. That's all right. This is a recent oil painting that I have done. It's based from a photograph. You can see that you're on top.
Yeah, you're up high.
Yep, you're on top of a series of roofs. This is called silo rooftop, and it's a number of these water tower silos throughout. And I just found it engaging to just reduce these almost to just pure geometry. I'm really excited about reducing something to geometry. Simplify it. Again, make it more surprising. This is another piece right here. This is called Docks After Dinner.
That's Docks After Dinner. So
yeah. So it's a square piece, and it may seem a little, hard to decipher, but frankly, that's what when a viewer gets engaged in work and connects, they bring something else to it.
Sure.
So this was actually the back of a restaurant and kind of an alcove of sorts where everything after dinner was stored. The trays,
Gotcha. Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's
right.
essentially it's an image of clutter. It's a celebration of clutter. But I took that as a point of departure. This white structure right here is actually a food rack.
Right.
You might put trays in there.
Sure.
But it's really reduced to vertical and horizontal lines. And that's the kind of thing here. I'm trying to be surprising in shapes. I want to give a clue. I don't want to leave someone so stranded as like, what the heck am I looking for? So I'm actually pretty excited about this piece.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm getting excited listening to you talk about it. Is anybody else out there getting excited? Go
ahead, raise your hands.
In the virtual world, I gotta tell you that's the bridge in Tillman, correct?
That's correct. This is
Or bridge.
It is at the Maritime Museum,
and
it is the bridge that was from Tillman,
right,
relocated. And every time I've been here over the last couple of years, I drive by there and I was like, I gotta paint that thing.
Right.
I gotta paint that thing. So I painted that thing.
Does light come into, when you say they capture the light for plein air, is that a big thing for you? Is it more about the geometry?
Well, it's a good question. Some people believe that you paint the light.
Right.
That plays a part in my work, but not always. I'll make up the light, or change the light, or invent the light.
Okay.
I was interested in just clusters of shapes.
When you say you dissolve the image, what do you have to start with to get it to dissolve? Where do you start in something?
I start representational.
Okay.
So first of all, as I'm looking at something, I have to understand what has originally drawn me to that subject. Is it shapes? Is it color? Is it, a series of things? But what I would tend to do is to define shapes and then destroy shapes. And it may just be, over a certain edge. I don't want everything to be defined. Again, it's about adding surprises.
Right.
And ultimately, I don't care if this is about docs after dinner. It's a physical piece of a combination of colors put in a certain order, right?
Right.
And even though some pieces move a little bit more representational, that's what I'm excited about. And that's what I like experimenting with. Some of which, they may not be successful, but worth that adventure.
Were you a punk? Were you a punk rocker?
I was probably more a rock and roller.
Rock and roller, gotcha. Okay. I've got to tell you.
So why do you ask? Are you just talking about
when you're talking about breaking things down and just like that kind of sort of like just reminded me of how I felt when I was sort of younger. I didn't act on it necessarily, but I really had I was drawn towards that type of thinking. Well, there's another woman who paints here who painted a. She's I can't remember her name. Genevieve or. Georgiana. She painted a deconstructed or dissolved Smith Island strawberry cake the last time she was here. I have never forgotten that cake, ever. And this reminds me of that, and that I'll never forget these images. I can promise.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me just touch upon it real quick. Georgiana Lenson and I are really good buds, and we're painting buds, and we typically paint together and have throughout this week. She lives in Pennsylvania, I live in Maryland. We sometimes get together and paint at studios. But she's been an artist for me who's been influential because we think in a similar way, and so we can kind of feed off of each other.
Yeah, is that canvas we're looking at there?
This is actually a cradled board, so it is a surface. I guess I shouldn't be pounding on art, should I?
What is the left untouched representing there? Is that the ground, or?
For me, I use the quality of paint to just let things drip, or I wipe them out, or I sand them down. So, at some point, you're just creating surfaces and marks.
Right.
And if those marks are placed strategically and well, and your geometry is put together and thought out well, I think for me that pulls together an exciting image. Now this piece right here, actually, if you look close, so acrylic is something I've just been playing around with for a month and a half during COVID. Uh-huh. I still had some supplies from when I was in college in the 80s. So what I did here in this board is oftentimes I'm just starting with colored pencils and just starting to draw, suggesting what the image might be and what my outlines might be, but then just really making marks. Many of those have been covered, some of those have been left. Same thing with the paint. I don't know that you have to cover every single surface of the painting. Sometimes that opening, because there's such
it kind of leads you in.
There's so density that gives some relief.
Right. Now, one of the things I love looking at paintings like this is I can always find something in the painting that I really haven't seen before, or I've been thinking about for a long time. I'm like, is that really what the painter was doing right there? And it just kind of entertains you. The painting sort of gives back in that way. Does it ever surprise you when you look at some of your work, like what's going on, or you know everything specifically that's going on in that painting?
That's an excellent question. First of all, I don't believe you have to understand what or why you paint. And I think there was a number of years that I thought, well, I had to have this idea, almost had to have a thesis of sorts. I really need to understand it. But oftentimes I don't know why I'm painting. I'm painting because I'm responding to something in front of me, and an urgent feeling within me, and I want to translate that energy. But in a lot of ways, the goal of an artist is to make something more exciting than it really is, right? So this was just a row of trees with some sand mounds. And I just kept painting it and moving it. Maybe this rhythm right here wasn't right, so I paint over it or push it around. Maybe it's not as exciting in the color, so I keep pushing it and scratching into it. Painting with thin, painting with thick, scraping, wiping down. And truthfully, the works that I have done that I most respond to and I'm proud of are ones that surprise me. Because I don't, if I already know what I'm going to do, it's boring. I want to be, remember, we started this off where it was, you have to entertain yourself. I'm a very restless person. I get bored easily. So I've got to keep myself excited. And some of that is just inventing, reinventing, questioning. I don't have to make it look like that. It's not necessarily site-specific. It's a feeling of, as you had described, some elements on a waterfront on a cloudy day. Probably cumulus clouds, and a nice blue sky, and you could just feel almost a breeze and all of that. I mean, and that's what I want to instill.
Right.
One of the things about plein air that is different than studio work is you're responding to the temperature, the time of the day, the direction of the wind, the smells coming from that restaurant.
Right.
Right. So there are all of these things that, as a stimulus, enter. And for me, I really enjoy that because it helps me to interpret something differently than what I'm looking at. If I wanted to paint what I looked at, I could take a photo.
Right. Yeah, sure. Well, like I said, it's very, very exciting, and talking to you about it, I'm glad I got to meet you. Especially this year, it's been a little hard to kind of get to meet the artists. So I love the fact that gold is the beach there, which I would have taken me a little while, but I would have figured out. And again, that's what I love about looking at works like this, is that, they just constantly entertain you.
And constantly, and I think you mentioned that earlier, and you said it well, is it also constantly informs you.
Right.
I may look at a piece 5 years from now and experience it entirely different than originally. I have works that I have bought, or I have traded, or I have made that continue to surprise me year after year.
That's wonderful to hear.
So, and it's the same thing as that you had said. Maybe there's a piece here, and you start questioning. You start actually almost having, engaging with the artist in a way.
Exactly. Right? You start to see. The more you look, the more you actually start to see. Like, it just kind of moves your brain around. It's very, very interesting to look at these pieces, and I've got one or two at home that kind of trip me out all the time. What I mean?
I get it. It actually changed my life when I did it years ago, and it continues to, because one of going to different locations, always wonderful. Going to different locations with really exciting situations to paint, wonderful. Being amongst your community and peer of artists, fabulous. There's that exchange that happens in an environment like this that, the vast majority of our time as artists is we're isolated. We're doing things solo, and now all of a sudden you're sharing stories with an artist. Where did you paint last night? Oh yeah, I really like that. You pulled it off better than I did. And then the organizers and all of that. I mean, this is, truthfully, if there's any time I've ever felt like a rock star, it's been at Plein Air Easton. Just because treated well and, and everything you could possibly ask for.
Where are you online? Can people find you online and Facebook and that sort of thing? Where?
Yes. Well, my name is Ken Karlic. It's like garlic with a K. KenKarlic. I have a robust website, kenkarlic.com. Facebook, Instagram, all just with my name. Actually, on Facebook, it's more Ken Karlic Studio. But Instagram is also a good place as well.
Great. What kind of artist do you call yourself?
I consider myself a contemporary artist. There's a level of expressionism because it's really about the paint. I think that's that adequately.
Good. Ken Karlic, an incredibly exciting guy to talk to. Wonderful job with these, Ken, this week. Thank you very much for coming down.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate the invitation. I've enjoyed this talk.
The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation and was produced by Nick Richards. The theme music and additional music used in today's episode was generously provided by Blue Dot Sessions. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. You can learn more about Plein Air Easton at pleinaireaston.com.
That was it.